Lena Whitmore thought she had a perfect life. Mark Whitmore believed his world was safe. But when Evan Mercer moved in next door, a secret affair ignited a chain of events no one could have predicted, leading to betrayal, deception, and a murder that would shock an entire town. What really happened behind closed doors? Please subscribe for daily new update of Crime Story and watch till end. Lena Whitmore had always been the kind of woman people admired from a distance. Polite, graceful, and composed, she lived in a charming two-story house on Chestnut Lane in Milford, Ohio, a quiet town where everyone knew each other's names, and the loudest sound at night was the hum of crickets or the occasional passing train. Lena worked as an assistant principal at the local high school, known for her firm but fair attitude. Her husband, Mark Whitmore, owned a successful auto repair shop on the edge of town. Together, they gave off the impression of a stable, content couple with their lives completely in order. They didn't have children, but people assumed that was by choice. Lena often smiled when asked and said they were just enjoying life together, and that answer always seemed to satisfy. They had been married for 7 years, and their relationship had settled into a predictable rhythm. Mark would leave early for the shop, Lena would head to school after breakfast, and both would return home in time for dinner. Evenings were quiet, sometimes filled with music playing low in the background while Lena read on the porch and Mark tinkered with small mechanical projects in the garage. They were the couple you saw at community picnics, at charity events, or hosting backyard dinners in the summer. But as it often happens in small towns, where everyone smiles but not everyone is happy, appearances masked deeper truths. It started subtly. Lena began staying at work a little later. She joined new committees at school, things she never cared about before. Mark noticed the shift but didn't question it much at first. Everyone had their phases, he thought. Maybe she just needed a new outlet. But then came the weekends where she claimed to be visiting friends or running errands, only to return with vague stories and a distant look in her eyes. The intimacy between them had also changed. Conversations became shorter, meals quieter, and the once frequent affectionate gestures were replaced by polite distance. Despite the tension, Lena never seemed troubled. In fact, she seemed lighter, more vibrant, like someone with a secret they cherished. Mark began to feel like a stranger in his own home. His instincts screamed at him that something had changed, something big, but he couldn't prove it. Not yet. What he didn't know was that everything he feared was true. A line had been crossed, and soon their carefully built life would unravel in a way neither of them could have imagined. Mark chalked it up to routine fatigue, until he found a receipt in her purse for a lunch at a restaurant across town, on a day she had said she was in a meeting, a small thing, but enough to make his stomach turn. Still, he said nothing. He didn't want to be the paranoid husband. He tried to push it out of his mind, convincing himself there was probably an innocent explanation, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. In the weeks that followed, Lena and Evan began to see each other more frequently. They started jogging together in the mornings, sharing stories about their lives between breaths. Then came casual coffees on his porch after their runs. Lena told herself it was innocent. She needed a friend, someone to talk to outside of work and her marriage. But what she felt around Evan was something more, a pull she couldn't explain. He made her laugh, listened intently, and never asked too many questions. It was a connection she hadn't felt in years. Evan Mercer moved into the neighborhood in early spring, just as the trees began to bloom and the sidewalks filled with the sound of lawnmowers and bicycles. He purchased the old Beckett house at the end of the street, a place that had been vacant for nearly a year. The house wasn't much to look at, peeling paint, cracked steps, an overgrown lawn, but Evan worked quickly to fix it up. Within weeks, the grass was trimmed, the porch was repaired and flower beds lined the walkway. He was quiet, but friendly, always offering a wave to passers-by and stopping to chat during his evening walks. His easy manner and good looks didn't go unnoticed, especially by the women in the neighborhood. Lena first noticed Evan while she was watering her front garden one Saturday morning. He was jogging past, earbuds in, sweat clinging to his shirt, They exchanged a quick wave. It was nothing, just a neighborly gesture. But the next time she saw him, a few days later, during a community cleanup event, their paths crossed again. This time, they spoke simple things. How long he'd lived in town, where he was from, what he did for work. He told her he worked remotely, in cybersecurity, and liked the peace of a small town. There was something about his calm, confident tone that lingered in her mind long after the conversation ended. One night, when Mark was working late, Lena went to Evan's house under the pretense of going to the grocery store. That was the night it became physical. Afterward, she cried in the bathroom, confused and overwhelmed, but she didn't stop. Instead, she went back. Again and again. What started as friendship had become a full-blown affair, and it was no longer just about excitement. It was escape from routine, from silence, from a life she no longer recognized as her own. And though she didn't know it yet, every choice she made was pushing her closer to the edge of something far more dangerous than she ever imagined. Mark Whitmore had always been a man of quiet routines. He wasn't flashy or overly emotional, but he was steady, dependable, and careful. That's what made Lena's shift in behavior so unsettling. He began to notice the signs, subtle at first, like how she started locking her phone when she never used to. She no longer asked how his day went, no longer laughed at the little jokes he told over dinner. There were long pauses between conversations, hollow excuses when she came home late, and a different perfume he didn't recognize. The love he once felt from her now felt like politeness. And he wasn't stupid. He could feel the distance growing, even if she tried to hide it behind smiles. At first, she kept it all a secret. There was no affair, not yet. But the emotional closeness grew quickly. One morning, Evan reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face. It was such a small gesture, but it felt electric. From that point on, the boundaries blurred. They started texting throughout the day, inside jokes and long threads that stretched late into the night. Lena began lying to Mark about where she was going, who she was seeing, even what she was doing at work. The guilt crept in, but not enough to stop her. At first, Mark told himself not to overreact. He reasoned she might be stressed, maybe going through something internal. But as the weeks passed, his thoughts grew darker. He began replaying everything in his mind, her late-night texting, the random walks after dinner, the unexplained hours away. It was no longer suspicion, it was certainty. He started watching her closely. When she left the house, he noted the time. When she returned, he noticed the change in her clothes, the faint smell of cologne that wasn't his. He didn't confront her. Instead, he began gathering information. One evening, after she fell asleep on the couch, he quietly took her phone, hands trembling as he tried to unlock it. She had changed the password. That's when the panic truly set in. She was hiding something. The woman he'd trusted for years had built a wall around herself, and on the other side of it was someone else. Unable to take the uncertainty any longer, Mark installed a GPS tracker under Lena's car. He justified it to himself as a necessary step, not out of jealousy, but out of desperation. The next time she said she was going to a school event, he followed the tracker's path. It didn't lead to the school. It led to a house a few streets away, the old Beckett place. He watched from a distance as she parked, walked quickly to the door, and was let in by a man Mark didn't recognize. She stayed there for over an hour. Over the following days, Mark continued pretending everything was normal. He made her coffee in the mornings, complimented her outfits, kissed her on the cheek, but every moment they spent together felt like a performance. He was watching her now, studying her like a puzzle that needed solving. He began keeping notes in a small notebook he hid in the garage. Dates, times, patterns. He wasn't just tracking her anymore. He was planning something he hadn't yet named. Bet could feel rising inside him like a slow, creeping storm. The betrayal cut deeper than he expected. Mark didn't feel rage right away. What he felt first was a hollow sort of grief, the kind you get when you realize something is broken beyond repair. He drove back home and sat in the dark, staring at nothing. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't understand how their life had gotten here. But grief soon gave way to something colder. On the night of October 12th, Lena left the house around 8 p.m., casually mentioning she was meeting her friend Claire for dinner. Mark didn't flinch. He smiled, told her to have fun, and even walked her to the door. As she pulled out of the driveway, he stood on the porch, watching the taillights disappear down the street. The moment she turned the corner, he stepped back inside and checked the GPS tracker he had synced to his phone. She wasn't heading to any restaurant. The signal was moving toward the edge of town, toward Evan Mercer's house.